So table 3, we bet out 14, nice and strong to get hopefully some fold equity. The biggest thing is with this, right when I see that flop, I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to fire probably 3. You don't want to fire 1 because there's no point, because the guy's gonna have so many hands he's gonna check call you with. Firing 2 really isn't that good unless the turn is like a queen or a king or something. You fire 2 and the guy doesn't fold, and you're like, well, I just don't think he's gonna fold. But I would still just fire 3. Just if the board was rainbow, like 2-3 jack, and the turn came like a king and he like check called, well, now it's more likely that he has like ace 4, ace 5, which would probably just, I guess you lose that. But it more likely has like ace 4, ace 5, 4, 5, 5, 6, or he actually has a jack and he's just not folding. So then you might be like, okay, well, I'm gonna fire 2. But with the flush out there and this type of hand or board, I'm like always firing 3. So you want to set it up nicely here. Flops at 5s, and I believe I screw up this check raise. Okay. Yeah, table 4, I went to like 28 or something, but I have no idea why. That was a mistake, obviously. And took down table 2, and now we hit an ace. So now it's a whole different story. We don't need to bluff it. So now if we want to bet, we can bet like something like $20 or something. Whether I can do something from him or to get a really like call down. But he goes ahead and shoves. And if you remember, he instantly check call. Well, he check called the flop pretty quick, and he instant check calls turn, and this kind of instant. Okay, so we just watch his speed here, because he like kind of quickly calls the flop, and then the turn he like instant check calls. He instant checks there, and then like snap checks, and then like quickly jams. So I snap call because it really doesn't make it, like he'd have to have like a super weak hand, and most likely his hand, like when they do that, it's like super weak or it's a draw, and it just doesn't really make any sense. Like what would he have? Like that's not how they play like a set ever, and that's not really how they play like 2 pair. Like he'd have to have like ace 3 or ace jack, or I guess ace 8 of hearts. And that's just not how he would play it. Like if he had ace 8 of hearts, sure, like his timing makes sense. Definitely makes sense for him. If he had like ace jack, the timing would be a little bit slower most of the time. And but the main thing is they don't just open shove. Like he would check here a lot of the time with his 2 pair, or like time down and do something. Maybe bet like 60, like half pot, or bet like $40 or something like that. So his timing and his bet sizing would be much different if he had the 2 pairs, and there's just nothing else he can have. The 4-5 is the only other thing you have, and again, that falls in the category of he checks it a lot of the time, he times, and he could bet a smaller amount. So when he like instantly does something, I mean, first of all, that brings up alarms, and shoves, it just like makes no sense, and that's why we snap called him there. Again, this check raise on table 4s. I guess I was so excited about table 3, I didn't realize I was check raising 8 billion. Table 2 here is another weak hand about to be played by me. I 3-bet blind versus blind. Obviously fine with this hand. I haven't messed with this guy at all. He's the guy that had ace queen. That wasn't in the video, but I showed it. This flop comes down. He's been pretty tight, so I expected to have a lot of fold equity with my 3-bet. So when this flop comes down, I want to look at the board. If I get this thing out of the way. Yeah. And, what do I think he has? I think he has hands like maybe an ace-jack suited. Potentially queen-king suited. A lot of 9s, 8s, 10s. Maybe a jack-queen suited. Something like that. So really when I'm looking at this, I don't see much fold equity. And I'm not going to fire. I'm not going to barrel just because this guy's been tighter. And I don't think he's opened that much blind versus blind, or I don't know too much with blind versus blind, but just overall he's been tighter. And looks like he's a decent player. So I didn't want to fire multiple streets. This would be a spot where I'd probably fire 2, I think. Or at least firing 2 is okay. I mean, I usually never fire 2. So I'd probably fire 3. But so I check the flop. He checks the turn. And I should just bet the turn. I'm not sure why I didn't. Again, I guess I was falling into this passive trap of mine. But I should just bet the turn. If he has a hand and he calls me, that's fine. I can still bet the river. Yeah, I think this was just overly passive and overly weak.